right, guys. So a Russian boxer died over the weekend from damage that he took in his contest. Now, this is a very tough topic. It's a very serious topic. I am terrible with names, and when I get a name wrong, I feel that is very condescending to do. So I'm not going to attempt the name. But the Russian boxer was in a contest, and he was just getting hit a lot. Right? That's the sport, and he was failing in terms of competing with his opponent. He wasn't getting out of the way. He was taking a lot of shots. Now, in between rounds, Buddy McGirt, very respected, very famous boxing coach, is seen, caught on camera, caught on microphone, pleading with his fighter. Let me stop the fight. And he's pleading. He's saying the word please. Then he starts upping his language, and he ups his tone. He's very strong with his opponent, but with his fighter. But ultimately, he does leave it to the fighter. Just give me the nod. Say I have your permission. I'm going to stop this fight. And he told him, you're just getting hit a lot. You're getting hit too much. You're getting hit. Let's stop the fight. Buddy McGirt did a great job. I just want to offer that because I'm well aware that in the evidence that we have now, that's going to be very hard for Buddy. I don't think any of us will judge him. I certainly hope that we wouldn't. But if we do judge him, let's come to the right conclusion. That he saw what he saw, he was right in his analysis, and he pled with his fighter to allow him to stop the fight. They, I can assure you, have their own deal. Coach McGirt and his fighter have their own deal behind the scenes of what to do in that kind of situation. I think it became very obvious that their deal was, buddy, you bring it to me and then let me make the ultimate decision. That's what it certainly appeared to be. So very tough spot for everybody. But so many people have brought up the question of what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. Now, whenever this happens in combat, you know the black eye that it gets. And I don't like to shun from this because it's very real and it's very serious. And it is a contact sport. I would just like to remind you, we see this in all sports. A swimmer recently died. A basketball player a number of years ago died. He was actually chewing gum on the court. Football players are taking their... You see some of these things. I just don't want it to be a total black eye to this sport of combat, if we're being fair here and we're being mature about it. But whenever I hear the question of what can be done to prevent this in the future, guys, the answer is simple and the answer is obvious and it's right in front of us. So let's either pretend that we do care or let's stop pretending. It's one of the two. But the duration and the length of these contests is not what the human body was made for. And it is silly and it was ridiculous. The fact that he was even scheduled to be out there for 12 rounds is silly and it's ridiculous. And before you push back on me, the commissions agree with me. They agree with me in the respect that it used to be endless rounds. Way back in the 1800s, you could fight 100 rounds. Now, a round was different back then. Every time there was a knockdown, that was called a round. I understand that, but when the regulation came in, they went to 15 rounds. When I was growing up watching Sugar Ray Leonard, it was 15 rounds. They looked at it and said, that's not right. They pulled it back to 12. I appreciate and applaud that, but they still don't have the right number. Why is it that when we hear of these stories, and yes, they are few and far between, I'm aware of that, but they are never zero in the amateurs? Why are amateur boxers or amateur wrestlers or taekwondo or judo or any other form of combat not subject to these dark moments? And before you tell me it's because their uniforms are different, you are wrong. They are not. And before you tell me their skills and their power are different, that is silly and ignorant of you because every single professional has an amateur background. All of them, 100%. So it's the same guys doing the same thing. They were just calling it amateur. So what is the difference? The difference is the rounds. The difference is the amount of time allotted that they are allowed and expected to be out there. There is no other difference. So we either shorten the time of the combat and of the competitions, and we show everybody that we are forward-thinking, that we are observant and understanding and compassionate, or we don't. We leave it the way it is, but there's no room to go both ways anymore. Every single piece of this sport has been revisited over time. Putting rounds in, putting a parameter in, the way you wrap the hands, the fact that you weigh them in when you weigh them in, the rehydration. We are having conversations on weight cutting that is actually showing grounds of gaining steam, and sanctions and provisions are being put in place. We are having more provisions on weight cutting and sanctions and provisions being put in place while there is absolutely zero dialogues on the agenda, zero pieces brought forward to any commission or the ABC itself to look at the duration. In the sport of boxing, I mean, it's completely messed up, and they've tried to fix it over time. Now these fighters are fighting once and twice a year. On a good year, a guy might get 3 fights. And people are doing that, and they're saying, well, they need to recover in between fights. They need to recover in between fights. Isn't that a sign for you of what bad must be happening in the fight? Isn't that a huge glaring flag for you? The amateurs will go do 2 or 3 fights in a weekend. The Olympic Games, 5 fights over the course of 4 days. And they can do it, and they're fine, and they can go have lunch and breakfast and go on about their families and their lives afterwards. What's the difference? The rounds. That's the only thing that is different. In mixed martial arts, we came up with 30 minutes of fighting. That's now held exclusively for championship and main event fights for reasons that are beyond explanation to me. But that's the way it is. That was an arbitrary number picked the night that Royce Gracie fought Ken Shamrock. Completely arbitrary to anything. They were supposed to go out there, and they were advertised that they would go out there with no time limit. The promoter of the event, as minutes start tacking on to this contest that's getting long and drawn out and showing no end in sight, realizes I have a pay-per-view window, and they're going to throw this show right off the air. He then made a decision, unilaterally went across the ring, yelled to the referee to tell the athletes that at 30 minutes we're stopping this and calling it a draw. Draws were also said and advertised prior to the event to be not a thing. Promoter did the right thing. I'm just suggesting for you why he did it. It was very arbitrary. He made it up. He made it up on the fly. And people looked at it and go, that was about the right amount of time. That time frame looked right. That is not based on any level of intelligence. We then stopped doing tournaments and other things that the sport was having at that time because the skills had gotten better, the blows got too much, and the guys just couldn't take it. But we kept that time. Everything has been revisited. From the hand wraps to the drug testing, to the gloves you wear, to the commission, to the sanctioning, to the pre-fight test, everybody, all the way down to what a downed opponent is. Everything has been revisited. But an arbitrary made-up number of the duration of the contest lives on.